your text, your song you listen to, video you're watching, whatever you're doing. And then let's get started. All right, let's see. Give Ed and Woody a minute here to get their feet on the ground. Morning, Ethan. Well, yesterday was certainly, I would call it one of the most unique days of my teaching career. I got to school here. Everyone was leaving while I got here, and I didn't understand it. I didn't really take time to ask them. Got up here, one light worked, that one right there. Actually, that one, the one that's out right now. Yep. And no plugs worked, and there was no Wi-Fi. So I zoomed. If any of you were here, period one yesterday, I zoomed from my hotspot on my phone in my boss's office because there were windows and there was light. And then I ran home to get to period two. Just to hear that they said period 1 and 2 were supposed to be asynchronous, but the teachers didn't get the email. Try that one on for size. So a little bit of an interesting start. And then I went to girls tennis practice inside for a little bit just to hear that the older participants on the team said that they had one Zoom all day, that their teachers just put up like asynchronous stuff the whole day. So who knows? All right, well, we got a full lesson here today, and I got some announcements to make. So if you could, everybody, go on your computers, please. Go to modules. For those of you at home, I'm sharing the screen here with everyone. And we're going to go down to week 15. And 422, that's the day today. We're going to click on Russian Revolution, okay? So I have your classes Nearpod right here, the link. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that the assignment for yesterday, which I labeled when I was in it, like literally, like I said, pretty flustered. I called it 2-hour delay schedule, which it's 2-hour delay assignment. But I had 39 of them turned in. That's about half the students. So if you didn't get this done, consider this your homework between now and I'll probably try to grade them tomorrow morning when you are taking iLearn. Okay. And then that leads me to my next thought, which is iLearn presentations are delayed until Tuesday of next week. Everyone that was supposed to present tomorrow, because most of you, actually everybody who's not a freshman in here, or even if you are not a freshman but you're taking biology, you will be taking this iLearn tomorrow, periods 1 to 3. Okay, that might be good for you. I mean, you don't have to come to periods. I mean, you don't have periods 1 to 3 meeting tomorrow. So I'm sure you don't mind this class, but your periods 2 and 3, maybe you're not such a fancy of. So I'm just kidding. That was a little sarcasm, but that means that periods 1, 2, 3 tomorrow, you're going to be testing. Okay. So there it is. If we could, I want to get started here. So if you have any extra time at the end, the 2-hour delay assignment that I had on here is videos. So not going to be a lot of time in class unless you have your own headphones. I could go get some, but if we do have any extra time, we can get started on that. But let's go ahead and get the Nearpod launch. Make sure got it up. All right. So go ahead and click on that, please. I'm going to launch the participation here. And see if my computer likes me today. Here is the code. And I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen share. Those of you in the room, either click on the link and get in or put the code in 9UA3Q. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that now. Like I was telling Ian and others, this is pretty interesting stuff here. We haven't talked too much about Russia in this class. This will have direct consequences on the world today. Obviously, the relationship between the United States and Russia isn't great. Russia controls 1/10 of the world's earth. So 10% of the world is controlled by Russia. And this is kind of their history of how they became what they were going into World War II, which then they turned into the biggest adversary the United States has ever had after that. Adversary meaning enemy. All right. So here's the link. Michael, can you see the link? Okay, great. I will post it in here. Chris, are you in? Chris Pickett, are you in? Okay, I'm just making sure. I want to get everybody involved here. Xavier, can I get a thumbs up? You in? Renisha, are you in? Chris, you in? Good. Jacob? Good. All right. Kyla. Luke, can you wake Kyla up? Kyla, you have your computer with you today? Let's go. I don't have 10 extra minutes. Come on. Timmy, you good? All right. I'm gonna wait about maybe like 10 more seconds. I'm gonna get rolling here. So we're gonna I'm gonna see who watched the video yesterday. If you did, you would recognize how bad World War I was for civilians too. It was disgusting. You saw how the Germans and the Russians just torched villages, knocking them out just basically as vengeance for no good reason. And also, I think if you watched the video yesterday, you probably picked up on the fact that did the Russian Tsar take care of his people? No. Okay. And so that was one of the biggest things we're going to look at today. And we can almost compare it to slavery in the United States, except on a much, a lot more people were involved in it, but it wasn't as, I mean, serfs were owned by their landlord, but it wasn't the same kind of, it wasn't what's called chattel slavery. It was a little different. They called it serfdom all the way until 1917. Okay, which that's only 104 years ago. And some people argue, again, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm so excited to talk about this. Some people argue that Vladimir Putin just replaced like Stalin and Lenin and the Tsar, who we're going to talk about today, and acts like the dictator, and everyone else is still living the life of a serf in Russia. It's not as bad, but it's pretty bad. The majority, way beyond the majority of people, have no, what you would call upward mobility in Russia. That means the ability to move from like low class to middle class, or have like financial freedom. Okay. So on that note, let me get started here. And this is going to be an open-ended question. If you have no clue, try your best. Maybe do a quick Google search. You got 2 minutes. Kyle, are you in? All right. So here we go. Why do you think World War I could have, how do you think World War I could have ended without crushing Germany? Okay. How could these powers, these that controlled a lot of the Earth's surface, have ended the war without killing Germany? Well, Luke, what do you think? I only got 6 people in here.
I'm still stuck on.
What did it say on your screen?
Like it's the screen before the question. Oh, you guys are on.
Oh, did I start a new Nearpod? All right, everybody. If you click the link online, I did the wrong Nearpod. So can you join the QUA3 or 9UA3Q Nearpod? Sorry about that. Everybody online at home as well. I started a new one on accident, so that link is invalid. That's completely my fault. I wonder if there's a fancy way for me to make this longer. Anyways, thanks everybody for adjusting. I got a little ahead of myself. Like I said, I've been waiting for 2 days to talk about this. So how do you QUA or 9UA3Q join.nearpod.com. And really this is just to get people to start thinking. if I had to be honest. I'm gonna hide the names here, obviously. Not sure. I mean, I think a lot of the world wasn't sure, if I'm gonna be honest. But they could have been less harsh for their punishment for Germany. I think the peace treaty could have ended it. Maybe it would have ended earlier. If the other countries didn't be so reckless, it probably could have ended differently. Everyone just should have admitted they were dumb and taking their losses for being dumb. Who put that? Anybody want to take credit for that? That common sense prevail. That's yeah, but the problem is people get mad, countries get mad when their citizens are dead and they're in debt. Remember, money drives, I hate to say this, but money almost drives everything, right? So these countries that are notoriously famous, like Britain and France, for so long, are in shambles and they're not happy. Not at all. Somebody put all right. Time is up. I'm not gonna if people didn't get that one, that's okay. But I don't think there's a right answer here. Like there's not a perfect answer, obviously, because when you declare a winner and a loser, typically the loser has to face some kind of consequences. But by them literally crushing the spirit of the Germans after World War I, it allowed for the rise of who? Adolf Hitler. And then obviously at this time, and this is what we'll get into next week, but this time there was that growing sense of nationalism. Does anybody remember when we talked about nationalism, pride in one's country? Well, they took these countries, even during World War I, if you were listening yesterday, the Russians hated the Jews too. The Russians took it out on the Jews. My wife's great grandfather was a Bolshevik or a Jew who was a Bolshevik. So he was a communist Jew that during the Civil War we're going to talk about fled to the United States. And because there was so much anti-Semitism in Russia also. Most people think it was just Hitler. It wasn't. And this nationalism, especially that was created during World War I and before, led to a lot of these events. One that we didn't even talk about, the Armenian genocide, the Ottoman Empire, 2 million Christians disappeared during World War I. And just last year, they admitted that it was a genocide against the Armenians. There were a little Christian group people in what is now Armenia or Turkey, and they just moved them to concentration camps and slowly got rid of them. And nobody did anything about it. All right, so today we're taking a look at the Russian Revolution. We'll go full screen here. Hopefully, if you're online here, you are in. I'll know by the participation. So I'm going to move this over though and make this full screen. So does anybody know who this picture is of? Anyone heard of Vladimir Ulyanich Ulyanov, also known as 5-letter word Lenin? Vladimir Lenin is how he goes by in English, but his full name was Vladimir Ulyanich Ulyanov, and he would be the man to lead. It's hard to say. The French Revolution was more important in terms of like people learning how to like actually think about having rights. But this one is pretty important in terms of how the United States and our own civilization was embattled in a Cold War. This is why we have a bomb shelter in the bottom of North Central. Did you know that? There's one in Northview also. There's actually a tunnel that connects the two schools because of the Cold War, and that all happened because of this revolution. Okay, like I said, your parents, you can ask your parents about it. They're probably not, they're not that old anymore, but maybe your grandparents, if they're still alive, they'll recall what it was like during this. So the Russian Revolution. There's a few causes here. Oh, do you guys want to take notes or not? I just want to listen. I have a note sheet made for you. You just want to listen today? All right, fine. Kamira, though, you got to wake up. I know. All right, so Causes of the revolution. First off, remember the Industrial Revolution happened? Well, Russia was way far behind. So instead of industrializing, using like making like steel factories, just factories in general, and textile factories and all that, Russia let Germany, France, and Great Britain buy their factories and run them. And so what they did was, when people moved from the farms like into the city, like they did in the mid 1800s in all these other countries, even in the United States, they had farmers moving to the cities, and they were treated just like they were in the early part of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, France, etc., U.S. But this was 100 years later, so it was pretty bad. Also, then Russia lost to little Japan. You know, Japan that looks like this big on a map. Russia lost to Japan in what's called the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. To make it even more embarrassing, literally more embarrassing to the Russians, was their whole fleet, their whole navy. This was a battle that was fought in the water. Their whole navy was in the Black Sea, which is situated between like the Ukraine, Russia, and Turkey today. And they asked the British if they could use the Suez Canal to take their troops down the Red Sea and then get them over, or their ships get them over to Japan. And the Great Britain said no. So they had to fuel their whole navy around the continent of Africa, go down the Cape of Good Hope, and then sail to, basically they were fighting over this peninsula that is close to modern day Korea. And they lost bad because their navy didn't get there. And so the Japanese absolutely humiliated the Russians in the Sea of Japan. And it got into the newspapers, and the leader of the Russian army was the Tsar. He's the emperor. It was his uncle. So his uncle looked like trash, and the Tsar looked like trash because of it. Ian. Japan was starting to get powerful, but they were racially not accepted by the major powers. In fact, that's why I didn't get a chance to explain on Tuesday, but at the Treaty of Versailles, they asked to end racism against the Japanese. And at the Treaty of Versailles, they said, no, we're still going to look at you as half people. The United States literally had a saying that the Japanese were half of a Caucasian. This blatant racism was as a real thing. You can look it up. You'll learn about it next year, I hope, if you have a good U.S. history teacher. Okay, half a person. And so because they were better than the other Asians, they were smarter, but they weren't as good as the white European people. I mean, in the United States even said this with many, many Japanese people living on their western coast. Ian. It was 5 years later they occupied the Korean Peninsula, yeah. But the United States had told them they could do that, but then the U.S. went back on their promises 3 times and said they weren't allowed to. We'll get into that when we get into World War II for sure. Actually, next week we'll get into that. So, also then, basically 3 months after this loss, is the Revolution of 1905, which is called Bloody Sunday, and basically a bunch of women who were tired of not being able to feed their kids. They were running there. They literally couldn't produce breast milk to feed babies because there was so little food. And then you topple that with losing to a country that they didn't even basically know existed, which was actually becoming a powerhouse. They marched to the palace, like a 1,000-room palace in St. Petersburg. And they were screaming, we want bread, we want food. And the Tsar wasn't even in his palace, but the Tsar's troops fired on a bunch of women. Now, the people that were conducting these protests were smart. They put women and kids in the front line, but they had men in the back with guns and rocks and different things they were throwing at the guards So when newspapers covered this around the world, it made it look like the Tsar, his personal troops, were firing on innocent kids and women. In reality, the agitators were pretty bad. But 500 to 1,000 people were killed. Both sides censored responses, meaning like they lied about, they used propaganda to say what actually happened. And this led to it's called a Duma, like a parliament, and like a little bit of rights for the people. They would quickly disappear. All right, so people obviously became extremely upset with the bad industrialization, horrible conditions. A lot of times people would sleep underneath their machines in the factories because they couldn't find an apartment or housing to sleep in. Okay, 16, 18-hour days. And so they started to support this Karl Marx guy. Remember Karl Marx? Yeah? Okay, remember you made a picture book about his ideas. So the Bolshevik Party, which was one of maybe 1,000 or thousands of parties, was started by this guy on the right. See his picture? That is Vladimir Lenin, okay, who I was talking about at first. Now, after he starts this party and the revolution of 1905 happens, he is exiled. Okay, the secret police take him and they send him to Switzerland, where he is in exile. So, continuing on then, World War I starts. If you remember right, World War I caused the Russians to get just drastically defeated. If you listen to the video yesterday, not only did they not have guns, but a lot of them didn't have boots, okay, and were wearing socks out on the trenches. 1915, then, the Tsar, who's the emperor, the dictator, the absolute leader, says, I'm going to be in charge of the army, and he fires his uncle. And he leaves and goes to the front lines thinking that he's going to get the soldiers to fight harder. Absolutely not. In fact, the reverse effect happens. They stop fighting. They don't even care. His wife then is left to run the government, and she meets a man named Rasputin. Okay? And so because of this, and because of the lack of food and guns and how poorly the fighting is and how bad the leadership is, a lot of soldiers just ignored the orders. I told you they ran away and they shot at them. It was a catastrophe for Russia as World War I was. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you a few. Let's talk about this Rasputin character. His name is Grigory Rasputin, okay? And this is kind of you gotta stay with me here. This story is a little bit crazy. He heals the Tsar's only son, Alexei, and he is the heir to the throne, meaning he'll be the next Tsar, just like Franz Ferdinand was. And he had hemophilia, and the doctors were giving him aspirin because they thought aspirin would fix hemophilia, but they didn't know what aspirin actually did. Aspirin is a blood thinner. It makes you more apt to bleed. Seriously. So the fact that they're giving this kid aspirin, and so he tells him to stop giving him medicine, he starts getting better. And so the royal family thinks that this guy has mystic healing powers, Grigory Rasputin. And so they start to use him as a close advisor, and he starts spending the night in the royal palace and is seen around town with the royal family every day. And people start to think that something's up here. Now, I want you to see this Rasputin character. It looked cooler on my screen yesterday. It's a little pixelated here, but look at this. This is Grigory Rasputin. These are actual real photos, because yes, you can take pictures at this time. This is the mystic monk. If you got it on your own computer, take a good look at these eyes, baby. Wow. What do you think? What's that? Shady, huh? Shifty? Ian? Okay. Yeah, I always look at this picture and I think that this Grigori is looking into my soul, trying to tell my future or something, right? Everyone else get that as well? So this takes us to a little video here. This is pretty good. So this Rasputin character is one of the most infamous, not famous, infamous for, that's famous for a bad reason, character in history. Okay. Here's a little bit about the life of Grigory Rasputin. Then we're going to get into his life even more. Let me go ahead and pause this real quick. Can I turn subtitles on? Where's English? Captions.
On a cold winter night in
I gotta switch this to Epson. Epson. Switch this to Epson. All right, those of you at home should be able to hear this, but I'm gonna need to make sure this is on real quick. And let's rock and roll.
Felix Yusupov, anxious. On a cold winter night in 1916, Felix Yusupov anxiously prepared to pick up his dinner guest. If all went as planned, his guest would be dead by morning, though 4 others had already tried and failed to finish him off. The Russian monarchy was on the brink of collapse, and to Yusupov and his fellow aristocrats, the holy man they'd invited to dinner was the single cause of it all. But who was he? And how could a single monk be to blame for the fate of an empire? Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin began his life in Siberia, born in 1869 to a peasant family. He might have lived a life of obscurity in his small village, if not for his conversion to the Russian Orthodox Church in the 1890s. Inspired by the humbled monks that wandered endlessly from holy site to holy site, he spent years on pilgrimages across Russia. On his travels, strangers were captivated by Rasputin's magnetic presence. Some even believed he had mystical gifts of prediction and healing. Despite Rasputin's heavy drinking, petty theft, and promiscuity, his reputation as a monk quickly spread beyond Siberia and attracted both lay people and powerful Orthodox clergymen.
All right. How do you how or why did Rasputin become so well known? Yeah, you don't just wander into the the emperor's or the czar. It's a Russian word for emperor. Their house without having some kind of reputation. So I'm gonna go ahead. Let's take about 60 seconds here. Mystical person with healing powers, prediction powers. How he presented himself with godly life. I like that. Because he was nomadic, moving place to place, using big vocab words. I like that. Good. All right. So, do you think that's a real thing, the magical healing powers? Anybody? Hard for me to buy into it. I would agree with that. Let's go. We got a couple people out there that are either just chilling or don't want to type anything. Let's get going because your names are going to pop up my participation page. And I want to try to, we got to move on because I got multiple videos and we're running out of time. So, all right. Let's keep going. Oh, don't press that, Mr. Brunette. Yep. There we go.
When he finally reached the capital, St. Petersburg, Rasputin used his charisma and connections to win favor with the imperial family's spiritual advisor. In November 1905, Rasputin was finally introduced to Russian Tsar Nicholas II. Nicholas and his wife Alexandra devoutly believed in the Orthodox Church, as well as in mysticism and supernatural powers, and this Siberian holy man had them transfixed. It was a particularly tumultuous period for Russia and their family. The monarchy was barely clinging to control after the revolution of 1905. Their political struggles were only intensified by personal turmoil. Alexei, the heir to the throne, had a life-threatening blood disease called hemophilia. When Alexei suffered a severe medical crisis in 1912, Rasputin advised his parents to reject treatment from doctors. Alexei's health improved, cementing the royal family's belief that Rasputin had magical healing powers and guaranteeing his privileged place on the royal court. Today, we know that the doctors had prescribed aspirin, a drug that worsens hemophilia. After this incident, Rasputin made a prophecy. If he died or the royal family deserted him, both their son and their crown would soon be gone.
All right. How did Rasputin hold the royal family hostage then? Morning, George. Come on in and join the Nearpod. The link is 9UA32, not the one on period one, okay? That's the module. All right, so how did he hold the royal family hostage? It was right towards the end. He said that their son and crown would be gone if he died or was abandoned by the family. And this was after he healed their only child that would grow up to be the next czar. Is that a power play move on Rasputin's part or what? Yeah. Is that a good way to get the royal family to like you? I don't know about like you, maybe fear you, right? All right, let's get an answer in here, folks. Threaten them by saying their kid and crown would disappear. Correct. So what's crazy here, and spoiler alert, is his prediction comes to fruition though. All right.
Outside the royal family, people had mixed views on Rasputin. On one hand, peasants regarded him as one of their own, amplifying their often unheard voice to the monarchy. But nobles and clergymen came to despise his presence. Rasputin never ceased his scandalous behavior, and they were skeptical of his so-called powers and thought he was corrupting the royal family. By the end of World War I, they were convinced the only way to maintain order was to eliminate this sham of a holy man. With this conviction, Yusupov began to plot Rasputin's assassination. Though the exact details remain mysterious, our best guess at how it all unfolded comes from Yusupov's memoirs. He served Rasputin a number of pastries, believing they contained cyanide. But unbeknownst to Yusupov, one of his co-conspirators had a change of heart and substituted the poison with a harmless substance. To Yusupov's shock, Rasputin ate them without ill effect. In desperation, he shot Rasputin at point-blank range, but Rasputin recovered, punched his attacker, and fled. Yusupov and his accomplices pursued him, finally killing Rasputin with a bullet to the forehead and dumping his body in the Malanevka River. But far from stabilizing the monarchy's authority, Rasputin's death enraged the peasantry. Just as Rasputin prophesied, his murder was swiftly followed by that of the royal family. Whether the downfall of the Russian monarchy was a product of the monk's curse or the result of political tensions decades in the making, well, we may never know. So,
all right. Do you think that Rasputin casts a spell, or do you think the Romanovs were eventually going to die either way due to the fact that so many people were unhappy, World War I was bad, etc.? Okay, Kyla, get up. Come on. What do we think? Okay, this is this again, it's opinion. Okay, he 100% casts the spell. Maybe. A lot of historians would probably say that they were doomed to die anyways because they had been mistreating 90+% of the population for over 300 years, and they were very wealthy because of it. All right. Okay, get your answer in. Pretty much everyone. Now we got about 50-50 here. Okay, again, it kind of depends on what you believe, but it definitely came to happen that the family died. All right, we're gonna move on here. So this Rasputin guy, just a little bit of background information that I was gonna wait to share with you. I'm not making it too biased. He was a drunk. He had sexual affairs with both genders, and he had STDs. He bathed very little. Commonly wore the same monk's outfit at all times. And he oftentimes at night would wander into like the bars of St. Petersburg and brag about his sexual adventures with different members of the royal family. Okay. Who's a family in the United States that's popular on Instagram? Anybody want to throw one out there? Oh, okay. This should be like bragging about the Kardashians. All right. This guy, this is obviously before social media or anything. So pretty well known. And again, this is just, there's a lot of like skepticism about how he died. Some people will say he did get the 5 doses of cyanide. Other people say that it was fake, like the video. It just kind of depends on what source you believe. But either way, when he was thrown into the river, there's a legend that says that he wasn't dead when he was thrown into the river, that he had survived being shot 3 times, being poisoned up to what would kill someone 5 times. And then eventually they found his body 2 days later in the river, and it showed that he died from drowning, not from the bullets or from the cyanide, which is unbelievable. So that's going to make things a little bit more chaotic. Look at these houses. Jeez. All right. Why do you think the Russian Tsar, the emperor, the autocratic ruler just had to step down and give up power? Okay. What do you think why do you think he did that? This is one of the most important people in the world. Again, right up there, top 5, and he just gives up. I'm looking up an answer from somebody who had a question. People were not happy with him. The living conditions really bad. People revolted against the monarchy. Nothing good was coming from his ruling. Maybe that's also true. A lot of revolutions. Everyone was hungry. People were fierce. They wanted him gone. If he had stayed, anger would have amplified. Correct. Diseases? Not yet. Too much pressure or protesting. No one liked him. He didn't want to deal with what was going on. A lot of good answers here. But basically he abused the people and his family generations before, and now people were tired of it and they were going to do something about it. All right. We got 77%. We got to move on because we're not going to get through this lesson. I don't get to see you the next few days. Take a look at people just tearing down his stuff. All right, we're gonna have to move past this question just because of the fact that we don't have time. So from 1917 all the way until 1991, the United States and Russia became pretty big rivals because the United States didn't like communism. All right, here's how it went down. Started in what is called February, but was actually March in the United States and around the world. They were still on the old school Greek Orthodox calendar. Started with the protest in St. Petersburg. The Tsar was forced to abdicate, just like the German Kaiser did, and they set up this provisional government which said that they were going to have elections. They never had elections. Fast forward then, to what is called the October Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution. Bolshevik was just the political party that was made up of the communists, and they said that they were going to go for peace, land, and bread. Peace stood for get out of World War I. Land stood for give the peasants the land, take it away from the noble landowners, and bread stood for getting people fed again. Okay, so they tried to immediately do all this. Ironically, Lenin was given an entire bag of gold by the Germans and given safe passage to Russia by the Germans to finish off this revolution. And immediately they withdrew from World War I. I showed you that the other day. They got a lot of their land stolen. Okay, and they wouldn't recoup that land until after World War II. Lenin, ironically, would be replaced by Stalin, and Stalin and would end up invading Germany, and they would control half of Germany until 1989. Some of you have heard of that before. Okay, that leads to what's called a civil war, where basically anybody who supported the Tsar was on what was called the whites. The United States, even illegally, and Great Britain illegally gave them supplies, ammunition, guns to try to get the whites to win. The Reds won because they had the heart of the people. And in the midst of this whole thing, the Romanovs were put in this house in Ekaterinburg. And when the White Army was about 80 miles away and marching towards to try to save them, the Red Guard tricked them and told the whole family that was on house arrest that they were going to take a picture in the basement, and they were all shot, okay, by a shooting line. And they didn't, there was this rumor, this is why there's a Disney movie, there's a rumor that the Anastasia escaped, but in 2007, they found Alexei and Anastasia's bodies buried outside of a tree around this castle. And it wasn't until 2007 that they finally figured out that they never escaped. There was actually a woman who claimed that she was Anastasia. So that's how communism gets to Russia. That was quick. I'm going to go ahead and have to stop the share and finish off the Nearpod. Make sure you turn in the homework assignment from yesterday if you didn't do it, please. And have a great rest of your day, folks.
Bye. Have a great weekend since we're not going to see you tomorrow.
What's that, Francesca?
I said bye. Have a great weekend since we're not going to see you tomorrow.
I know. Oh, no. Zoomers, you'll see me tomorrow.
Oh, we will?
You already took the iLearn, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll see the Zoomers tomorrow. We'll have something going on, all right?
Okay. See you tomorrow then.
All right. Bye-bye.